Hi, my name is Jennifer Wages, and I'm in Speech 101 with Miss Callahan. My speech today is going to be about human trafficking, which includes forced labor and sexual trafficking of women, children. It can be any age group. So, Holly Austin Smith was a 14-year-old girl who was at the mall one day. She met a man there and continued this relationship with him over the phone, unbeknownst to her mother and father. He groomed her, and he told her all of the things that she wanted to hear. She was actually very severely depressed at the time, just going into middle school. So he said all the right things. He convinced her to run away with him, and she finally gave in and did just that. Well, she found out quite soon that it was not everything he had promised her. He immediately put her on the streets of New Jersey and started prostituting her for money. I have a niece who is about the same age as Holly. She's 15 years old, and the thought of something like that happening to her is just beyond comprehension to me. It really could happen to anyone. You know, the U.S. Department of State has a lot of information on their website about human trafficking. The task force. So what is human trafficking? Why is it happening, and who is the target? I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. What is human trafficking? This is also a new name for modern slavery. The actual definition from the U.S. Department of State definition on their website is the trafficking in persons, the recruitment, the transportation, or transfer of persons by means of threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, of the abuse of power or of a position of vulnerability, or of the giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another. In other words, to exploit someone. That is the definition that the U.S. Department of State gives on their website. There's different forms of human trafficking, and the two of the major forms of human trafficking are forced labor and sex trafficking. When a person is forced to work through coercion or threats, scheming, like migrant farm workers, women that do domestic responsibilities in the home, that is one form of human trafficking. The other form of human trafficking is sex trafficking, which is prevalent in the media. We hear a lot about that. It's when a person is required to engage in sexual acts or sex, and if they don't, there will be threats of force used, or they will actually be beaten. They try to recruit and entice these young women and boys too. It doesn't just happen. It happens through all types of people. It doesn't matter your gender. It doesn't matter your age. None of that matters. They purely solicit people for that purpose, to perform sex and sex acts for money, because it's a huge business nowadays. Now that I've explained a little bit about what sex trafficking is, what child labor or forced labor is, I would like to explain who can be a target for it. Who is a target for human trafficking? Children in the welfare system, kids that have run away, homeless kids, foster care kids who are depressed or unhappy at home, can easily be coerced. We also have minority groups that live in poverty, American Indian women, Alaskan Natives. We also have women and young girls that are, have substance abuse issues, victims of domestic abuse. It can be any race, any age, any gender, any ethnicity, any religion. Anybody can be prey to this. So after talking to you about what human trafficking is and who might be a target, I would like to tell you about why it happens in the U.S. There's two reasons mainly why it is so prevalent in the U.S., and it's something that needs to be talked about more and people need to be more educated on. Number one, it's a low risk for criminals. They perceive it to be low risk because there's low community awareness. Police officers don't have many resources and haven't been very educated on the subject. The victims don't have many resources either. There's not a lot of law enforcement training. Also, it's high profit. It's very profitable for them. Because these individuals that are willing to buy commercial sex are the ones that create the demand in the market. So, there wouldn't be a profit if there wasn't such a demand. So think about that. It creates it creates the market for it. So it's kind of amazing to think that there's a lot of people that actually want this and will pay money, to have sex with a child. So today I've talked to you about and hopefully answered a lot of questions you may have about, human trafficking, who's a target, why is it happening, and what it is. There's a lot of human trafficking going on in the U.S. that we are unaware of, and unfortunately, it's a huge business. Holly Austin Smith was a very young girl, and she was depressed at home, having a tough time as a teenager. She was easily coerced into something like this. She didn't know her life was going to change in a split second.